I think that one of the most important lessons is that you set your own limits. When you set the direction and you push past your comfort zone, you lean into that, and then you actually succeed at that, then it creates this feedback loop of like, oh, I'm actually capable of more than I thought I was and what I thought I could accomplish. And so then it kind of creates almost muscle memory of like, well, then think bigger. Like then because I know I can accomplish it because I just did it. And for me, it's like how I would apply that to everything in life. And it, like that you get to control your own reality of where your limits are, and they're not real.
What is up, Golden fam? Welcome to Drops of Gold, where we follow the thread until we drop the mic on the gold wisdom that ignites us all. I'm so excited to welcome to this episode Jeremy Schwartz. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm excited to read your beautiful bio because Jeremy is the co-owner of Powder Mountain and the co-founder of Summit, where for more than a decade he drove the creative vision behind the brand as creative director. Jeremy was also the founder and creative director of All the Colors, a creative consultancy agency that has supported companies through the crafting of their brand and narrative and identity, and execute on all the web assets, technologies, marketing strategies, and beyond. Prior to Summit, Jeremy spent 8 years in the music industry, touring in a rock band, as well as co-founding and managing a record label and music publishing company agency. He currently splits his time between Santa Monica, California, Powder Mountain, Utah. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you.
So, how are you today, brother? What's alive in your world?
Oh man, I'm feeling pretty good, I gotta say. Where do I start?
Well, I think where we can start is I would love to know where you were formed. Like, where did you become this version of yourself? Where did you have that moment where something clicked, ignited, which invited you into you?
It's interesting. Interesting you say where was I formed, because I feel like I'm continually growing and becoming this form. I think it's an ever ongoing evolution of growth. I think where I am today is probably a product of maybe the last 20 years of experiences. Probably more. It's probably my whole life of experiences. I think there's been some pivotal moments in my life that have probably shaped the person that I am today. I think I was fortunate enough to grow up in a great household with great parents and a loving family and brother and sister.
This is in Connecticut?
No, this is in Boston. I grew up on the North Shore in this little town called Marblehead. This little coastal town, actually beautiful town. And I had an amazing childhood. I had an amazing friend group, and fun town to grow up in. Got into a bunch of trouble, and as kids do. That helped sort of shape my discipline and help me become the person that I am. I think, I would say my path and story has taken multiple curves and turns. I think it really did start with music. I think that was always my passion as a child, starting from like 6 years old. I started playing piano, and then quickly wanted to learn guitar, so I learned guitar, and then drums, and then and really got into music, and that was sort of my first real love and passion.
Mm. Was there a igniter that got you interested in music before you picked up an instrument? Like, what was your first concert you went to?
My first concert was actually a Fish concert in New England, but I wasn't. I think I was 16 at the time when I went to that show.
So then, what happened at 6? Did you come from a music household?
Yeah, my dad grew up playing the accordion actually and the piano, and so he was actually an amazing pianist. He still is an amazing pianist. Mm. But he, growing up, from my earliest memories at 4, I just remember him playing. We would do these big dinner parties around Christmas time and at our house. Everyone would sit around and he'd play piano and everyone would sing the songs. And I just saw how much joy it brought, not just everyone there, but how much joy it brought my father. And I was like, wow, this is, I want to get into this. Like, it really resonated with me. And so I was like very eager to start playing, following his footsteps and start playing piano. And then from there, it just kind of, it really struck a chord with me. No pun intended. It actually was, I just remember even at a young age, this freedom and of creativity, like as I was just playing the piano, and like, I started by, you start learning some songs, very basic, basic chords and basic, melodies. And like pretty soon though, I would just kind of like play around and do my own thing. And I realized that was kind of more my creative outlet, and really got me to realize how much I liked the expression of songwriting itself. Even if it was just these little piano riffs that were just fun to create. It was really kind of like the birthing of what I soon would become, like, this foundation of creativity for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's always interesting to have a conversation with a creator and a creative about the inspiration inputs that lead to an output.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, even at that early age, when you were playing riffs on the piano, did you get inspirations from things that you'd see, things that you'd hear, you could even say things that you smell? I don't know. Like, where do those creative inspirations come from that lead to an output?
I mean, for me, it's what I hear. It's music for me. I mean, some people it's visual. Some people can be smell and taste. Like for me, from a musical perspective, it was hearing things. It was, I remember going to like Les Miserables in London or something at a young age, and like I was like blown away at just like the intricacies of how they wove the story in through the the melodies and the repeating melodies that would come back in songs, in later songs in the different acts. And it was just inspiring. It was like the feeling I felt, I was like, oh, I want to create that feeling for others, and for myself. And so like that's sort of where that, I didn't realize that. It's easy to talk about it now and like reflect on it and be like, oh, that's where I felt like this creative freedom. And that was a start. But it really, where I felt like that creativity for music blossomed for me was probably in my early teens, like maybe 13, 14, when I really got into like songwriting and found, writing partners and working with them. And I can reflect now and realize like that was a real, like maybe my fullest expression was like in music. And so I wasn't able to realize that until I moved into other, other activities and other roles and responsibilities of career things, I guess I could say, where like I didn't feel my creativity flowing. I was like, and so it made me always remember. I was like, okay, what did it feel like when I was in my full creative expression, like playing music, and then having to tap back into that. It was important that I could remember that, so I could make sure that I was applying that to whatever I was working on, whatever endeavor I was focusing on, and making sure that well wasn't drying up. Because there's many times that it's like you're just in it and you're working towards something, whether it's just a personal goal or a company you're trying to build, and like I realized later, I was like, I have to make sure I'm always tapped back into that feeling of full expression and creativity.
Was there ever an aspect of needing to push past resistance to fear, or were you just expressed and where did fear play into this role, and how did it ignite you forward?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think for me, I mean, the real fear, I think for me was it's interesting. It was never, funny enough, it was never like, am I good enough to create in music? I had this fear later once I kind of moved into more of a business mindset, was like, do I have the capabilities? Do I have the, like, to actually execute like on the level that I need to execute on? I never felt that in music from a writing and creative perspective. I did feel the fear of like, this is, the music industry is a tough industry. It's like, it's not easy to find your way through that. And so there's fears of like, can me and my band partners at the time, like, can we break through and get to the other side? And like, in some ways it kind of fueled us to like push harder and harder. Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting the way you answer that question for me, because there's the notion around pure freedom of expression, and then the business around it. And what I'm hearing is that is that you weren't saddled with fear of expression because it was for you like breathing. That's what I'm almost receiving. And one of the most beautiful expressions I've ever heard in my life was from a woman who's just been such a savant in my life. Her name's Just Magic, and she actually is a singer, and she does a whole workshop around free your voice. And what she said, before I even met her, we were in a workshop at Esalen, a shared workshop that Zach Bell was putting on called Return. And she said, do what you do not to be good. Share what you share to be free.
Love that.
And so there's this notion around like pure creative freedom, and there's no, and it's resonant for me because like I never had fear in being a first-time clothing designer at age 51 when I was designing a t-shirt, having no experience doing that before, because I was designing for me first.
Yeah.
I was just, and so I was just in a state of joy and pure expression. And even my greatest fear, which is my own voice and putting that out to the world around the He Manifesto, scared shitless to put that out of ridicule, fear of ridicule, and not ridicule from another, from the outside in, but for me, to myself. And so I'm really buoyed by hearing you just say like, no, it just was like, it never even occurred to you. That's fucking cool, dude.
Yeah. I think maybe it was just, confident, naive, aspect that worked, at the time. I think, when you talk about art in general, I think I'm so grateful I didn't have the fear around that, because once you start projecting of like, well, how is this art going to be interpreted? How is it, how am I going to, is this commercial? Like, can I actually do anything with it? It then, I feel like it dilutes the art, that you're creating. So being able to be fearless in your creation, and then once you've created it, you could do nothing. You could shelve it, or you can be like, okay, I feel proud. I want to share this with the world.
Well, and speaking of, so that's a perfect transition. So you were playing the piano, then you took up the guitar, and then you made this leap to actually sing, which is like another door. I don't know whether that was something you had to push through, or whether that came naturally as well. What was that like?
You know what? It was interesting. It actually came natural to me, amazing. which is interesting. Yeah. I just felt I wanted to actually express myself, and I had these melodies and and lyrics, and I wanted to share, and I wanted to. It just kind of came out naturally. Yeah. However, the wild thing is later with Summit, which we can get into. When I made the transition, I had to shift from being behind a guitar and singing to actually being on stage and introducing speakers or doing the opening remarks. And that was a whole different experience. And that was actually extremely, I had so much fear around it. And it was so wild. It was so confusing to me. I'm like, how come I have all this, it never even crossed my mind, being behind a guitar and singing, but actually saying speaking just my words and in expressing myself that way. I had so much fear around that. It was wild. Wow.
That's incredible. So you talked about the leap from all these doors you went through, but then you actually, the second thing of the I don't know, can we make a living of it? Can we actually be touring? And you did that. What was that like? Where was the first show? And what was that like for you to be on the show the first time and the stage the first time? And what was the feeling inside?
Oh man, you want me to go all the way back? Okay, I'll give you the breakdown. So the first show, you got to remember, this is early 2000s. I was very into pop punk at the time, and all these bands were surfacing at the time from Blink was getting big, Blink 182, and at the same time there was a whole movement of pop punk bands. And I went to the show with my who would soon become my band partner, this guy Spencer Charnas. And we went to it was like a Goldfinger and Real Big Fish show. I'm kind of dating myself, so I don't know if anyone even knows these bands. But it was at the Worcester Palladium, which is a big venue, and it's what inspired us to actually form a band. We're like, this is what it was like. It was just mesmerizing to us. And so the first show we played was like a battle of the bands at the same venue, like that we just saw like these bands that we looked up to. And we lost, but you know, there was a full crowd, and we lost the battle of the bands, but we won in the sense that it was the formation of like, wow, this is something that we're going to pursue, that we're going to do. And so that was like the spark that started it all. And, yeah, it's funny. We just kind of started thinking outside the box on how we could how we could just build this band, and grow it and start touring. And like, we got, this is like the early MySpace days, and we kind of like pulled some guerrilla marketing tactics and ended up becoming like the #1 unsigned band on MySpace for like a year and a half straight, basically. And we built up a whole following just literally through MySpace, through like the national following, that we were like, well, we don't need to sign to a label. We have this following. We can just set up our own tour. So that's how it started.
Early adopter.
Yeah.
Creating your own label.
Yeah.
And that was was that when you created your own record label?
Yeah.
That's amazing. What was the name of the band?
Ice Nine.
Ice Nine.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the next chapter, I am fascinated by something you said about music as storytelling, and talk about your feeling about how music as a metaphor can inform how we tell stories through business, through relationship. I mean, what's the melody? What's that?
I'm grateful music's my background for what we're doing now, because music it doesn't have confines as far as like, you box it in, but a lot of music, does as far as structure. You have your verses, your bridge, your chorus. And so within that box, then I always found it a fun and creative challenge of like, how do you tell the story through this frame that you're containing yourself in? Yeah. You obviously don't have to contain, you don't have to write a chorus, but like within the structure I was working with. So for me, it was like every word counts. Every word in a song counts, because you have 2.5 minutes to 4 minutes, 5 minutes, however long the song is. It's like every word has to mean something, and it has to bring the listener along to the next, it's got to take them on a journey. And I feel like that applies to just anything outside of me, like everything that's like from an email you write to someone, like you're still, at least in my mind, it's like every word still counts. You're still bringing someone through the message you're trying to get across. That's
so beautiful. So what was the year? What were the circumstances? And what the fuck catalyzed you into this rushing river called Summit? Yeah.
So it was 2007. We had been, by we, I mean my band and I, we'd been on tour. I don't even know how long at that point, but we were on tour like 9 months out of the year, touring the country, primarily US, Canada, and Mexico. And I was just getting burnt out from being on the road. And what I didn't realize until later, or maybe at this time, was like that my passion was in songwriting and producing, and not necessarily in being in a. I mean, I love performing live, but like my real passion was songwriting and producing. And I was just, the grind of just touring was not resonating with me, and I just felt like I was bumping up against the wall. And I also felt, and not everyone feels this way, but I experienced the music industry at that time, and this is at the time, this is like just post Napster. All the major labels are consolidating. Everyone's kind of crawling and scratching and trying to get their way to the top. It didn't feel collaborative where I was in the industry, and it felt, besides the close connection I had with like my brothers in arms, my bandsmate, it felt lonely outside of that. And I really was fried from tour. And at the same time, my soon-to-be business partners in Summit, one of them, Brett Levi, I went to high school with. Jeff, I met through Brett in college, and Elliot after college. And we'd be bouncing ideas.
And did Did Jeff and Elliot know each other growing up?
No, so me and Brett knew each other, and Brett and Jeff became friends in college.
And how
then
did Elliot get?
And so then Brett met Elliot outside, like after college, through Ryan Beagleman, or
Got it. Okay.
Okay. And so Brett was really the connecting piece to all of us. But we'd always be bouncing ideas off each other because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were trying to, I was operating this band as a business and label.
What was Brett doing at that time?
Brett was, he was running an energy consultant firm in DC. Okay. Jeff had a jewelry company. Elliot had an online e-newsletter for real estate called BizNow. We were young. I was like, I think 22, 23 at the time. And like, we didn't know what we were doing. We'd bounce ideas off each other. Like, how do we actually like build these babies, these little startups that we were working on? And Elliot had the idea. He's like, well, why don't we just get people who've actually built companies and learn from them? We'll get them all together. And Elliot was, he did the first one. He just literally cold called these people he looked up to and convinced them all to come to a ski event. And everyone came, had a blast. There wasn't really, community is such a word thrown around, now, but, and community is so important. But at the time, there was like TED and Davos, but there wasn't really this place for young entrepreneurs to come together and learn. And Elliot was really the one that unlocked all that. Oh. And so I was kind of still on tour and just wrapping it up and chatting with Brett and he connected me with Elliot and like, basically was like, we should do more events. We should, there's something here. Like there's things to learn from each other, that we don't know ourselves. And
was it clear that the four of you were just complementary skill sets and just values aligned, vibrationally on target? Was it just right away that it just clicked?
It just clicked, and it was fun. It was like it was pretty instant, even more so than in my bands. Like besides the one writing partner, like main person in the bands, like we had a really great dynamic. It was interesting having. It wasn't like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 was 4. It was exponential. Like when the four of us got together, the speed of growth was just like, it was like, oh wow, this clicks. We're all falling into, without even having to communicate that much, like the roles that we can provide the most value in.
And what were those roles for the four? If you had a sentence for each, like what was the superpower of each?
I would say Elliot had just big ideas and was always, also amazing at sales. Elliot, Brett, and Jeff are amazing at sales. They're just so personable and so like engaging. Brett also, he had the ability to, sell anyone on this dream, and it was an exciting dream, and it's still an exciting dream. From sponsors to also just kind of, again, thinking big and like pushing past like what we think is possible and like just going a little bit bigger. And Jeff also had this innate ability to bring people in and get them and share this vision of what we wanted to build that was continually to morph and grow over time. Like it was, in the beginning, it was just this baby idea of let's just bring entrepreneurs together to learn from each other, then grew into this much larger idea of community and exposing everyone to, not just business, but altruism and just, deeper connections with one another.
Yeah, well, that sounds like the rocket ship of Summit taking off. What was the tipping point that really told you that that this was real and this was happening?
The tipping point probably was when the White House tapped us to do an event for at the White House, because it was right when Obama came into office, and they, at this point, we had done like 3 events, and three events I think at this time, and small events, and Elliot had connected with this guy Yossi Sargant, who he worked at like the Office of Public Liaison at the White House, and basically he's like, hey, we're trying to create more transparency at the White House, with this younger generation, and we want to do like a roundtable at the White House, and basically it was like, and Elliot's like, we can do that. We have all these people, and Yossi's like, great. And so he's like, here are the 50 people that we want to bring to the White House. And Elliot's like, yeah, we can, yeah, of course. And we don't know a single person on the list. And so literally had to cold call all of these people, convince them to come to the White House, convince them to give us their social security numbers because they had to go through, Secret Service. So like, and all within like, it was like Yossi called us on a Friday and was like, we're doing the event, I think it was next Tuesday or next Thursday. And so we literally spent the whole like 72 hours, just cramming and trying to get a hold of all these people.
You divided and conquered. Everybody had a list, or
yeah.
Mostly Elliot and Brett.
It was mostly Elliot, Brett, and Jeff. And this is where this is the first where I kind of stepped in, is from like a branding perspective. I'm like, this has to feel legit. Like we can't be reaching out to these people as like some random summit series.
What did you do that made it legit?
I built all the design for the event itself, from like the positioning of like this White House event to the actual printed materials that we'd use, to the system that would actually gather all of their information, basically all of the branding, all of like the positioning.
So I have an expression which just feels like so fucking relevant here, which is nothing ignites and defines the mind like a tightly defined deadline. So you basically did this in what, like 72 hours, like 48 hours? Yeah. So, you always talk about like conversion. So you called you want to get to how many people?
50.
Mm-hmm. Called how many? We
had to call all of them. It wasn't here's 100,
so
get
you
50.
Had to lift
it
to
was
50.
Get to 50, get these 50.
And how many came?
49.
Holy shitbags.
Yeah.
That's a tight conversion.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Wow. And what happened at the White House?
It was a great event. It was like it was basically with again, it was this Office of Public Liaison. It was the discussion on like how to create more transparency. We had like the Evan Williams from Twitter, and Tony Hsieh from Zappos, and just this amazing group of people at this event. It was actually where we got the best piece of advice we got. So we did this event at the White House, and then after we did like a dinner and kind of just like at this other venue, and everyone's hanging out at night, and Tony Hsieh, at the time, he came up to us and was like, grabbed us around the neck, and he's like, "Is there anyone you wouldn't invite to this event if it wasn't for their level of wealth or if they were on this list?" And we looked around the room, we're like, "Yeah, some people don't really fit the mold of who we would invite." He's like, "Well, then they can't ever come to another event." And it was like a harsh reality, but at the same time, he's like, if you're building what you're building and you're building community, the culture of your community is the most important thing, and you have to protect that.
Wow.
Over everything else.
That is incredible advice. How would you define the culture of the community?
I would define it as open and authentic and engaging, where it feels like a rising tide lifts all ships. Everyone's there to help each other grow. Everyone's there to listen. Everyone's there to receive, and also give their gift back to everyone else around them. And it's magical to see at the events, because you're there. It's like something happens when you can check your ego at the door, when you can with the program we created, the whole point is, yes, it's interesting programming, but it's really to get people present and get people like in the moment and get them engaging with each other without any other preconceived notions, without their egos attached, so that they can actually collaborate and learn from each other and grow.
That unequivocally was my experience since going in 2012, and it very much was elemental. And for me, in my own entrepreneurial growth and the audacity of doing well while doing good,
mm-hmm.
and believing that you could do that, because the world doesn't necessarily tell us that. Or wasn't telling me that, based
mm-hmm.
upon the circles that I was in. There was people that are doing cool things, but it wasn't like this community where you could say like, no, we can actually do this in such a way that it offers that version of potency. So, unequivocally, and I cannot agree with you more on what Tony shared with you by way of advice around the curation aspect. So
important.
Yeah. What other lessons for you came up in that summit journey, because it's been an ascending, it's been a hero's journey in every way, including setbacks and ignitions forward and resets and what have you. What's been been some of the lessons along that journey?
God, pick a category. It's I think that one of the most important lessons is that we continue to prove to ourselves is your limits are only, I know it's kind of a cliche, but that you set your own limits. And so like when you push past those limits, it's like, it's why at Summit at Sea we hung this huge banner, which later became our book title, of "Make No Small Plans." Because when you set the direction and you push past your comfort zone, you lean into that, and then you actually succeed at that, then it creates this feedback loop of like, oh, I'm actually capable of more than I thought I was and what I thought I could accomplish. Yeah. And so then it kind of creates almost muscle memory of like, well, then think bigger. Like then because I know I can accomplish it because I just did it. And
yeah,
it's, for me, it's like how I would apply that to everything in life. And it like that you get to control your own reality of where your limits are, and they're not real.
It's a powerful lesson for anybody that's thinking of launching an audacious venture. What's one more before we move on that would be like another beautiful lesson for somebody who's a creator or maybe is looking to pass their own resistance?
It's finding a good group of people to build something with. I think that it's so important. I know there's like solo entrepreneurs.
Solopreneurs.
Yes, yeah. Which works for me, from my experience, having people you can trust and lean on that complement your skill set, again, lets you grow exponentially, and also holds you, hold accountability, for your own growth, for the growth of the business. If you're starting a company, but I think it's crucial.
So there's so much joy that I've experienced in Summit, and so many moments that I guess the only way to say it is like, you can't write that shit. Mm-hmm. In terms of the synchronicity, in terms of the magic, the people that you meet, something that happens that becomes that you'll never forget.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a story about a moment on your Summit journey in the community when you had one of those you can't write that shit moments.
Oh man.
Could be somebody who you invited as a guest who blew your mind. Could be a musician that you connected with on a heart level, and they shared something about their life. Could be anything.
Okay, yeah. I think, man, where do I start with that one? That's a great question. I think, man, there's a lot of inspiring moments. I'll share one, but one on a musician level. Again, this is going to date me again. But growing up, I loved Third Eye Blind. They were like in the like 90s, and like I still actually like love their music. I think Stephen Jenkins is an amazing songwriter, and I've always wanted to meet him. And I was like, well, let's have him play at Summit. And so, we invited him to Summit at Sea in like 2015, I think. And it was, and I had the opportunity. We actually like ended up hanging out and like becoming friends. And it was like, oh, this guy is like, that was a big influence on me as a musician and like an inspiration at the time. And like actually like then feeling like an equal basically with him was a pretty inspiring moment for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure he appreciated being seen that way.
Yeah.
Nobody who really is worth their salt wants to be put up on a pedestal. It's just like, no, actually, what are you bringing to the table?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's meet on that bridge.
Right.
So over time, you also developed this incredible agency, All the Colors, that allowed you to work on other brands, and one of the things that would be, I think, powerful for you to share, and I have a kinship to you in this way because I was in the advertising business for a decade back in the full on dating myself in the 80s and early 90s, right? And I missed the Mad Men, by the way, by a full 10 years. So I wasn't quite enjoying that version of it, but the aspect around being in the advertising business for me was I likened it to being a shipbuilder. And by the way, that's SHIP, shipbuilder. It's like you'd build the ship, you'd help build the ship, and you'd take it to the shore, and then it would sail away. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I want to be on that. I want to be on that boat. I want to be on that journey. And so you shared something with me that I'll let you recant to tell before we move on to what your next chapters you moved on to is like what you were desiring, what you were seeking, in terms of maybe something that was nagging at you in terms of that opportunity with that next chapter for you.
As far as the agency?
No, in terms of like when you were at the agency and you're like, okay, you shared with me like the story of which led you to what you're working on now,
so
like what you desired to be a part of.
Yeah, and I'll even back up a little bit further from that because
sure.
I guess there's, from a career perspective, there's probably 4, maybe 3 like pivotal moments. The hardest one was leaving music and starting Summit, because like music was who I was.
Yeah.
It's who I identified myself to be at the time, and so that was my hardest transition, making that decision. Like, oh my god, like and like I'm gonna like. I didn't see myself as this, as a person that could manage a business at an elevated level. I had all this imposter syndrome going into it that I wasn't capable, and like so I had to work through all of that. That was the hardest jump I made. And then, and I think it's 2019, as I stepped back from the day-to-day of Summit, I kind of fell backwards into launching a creative agency. And so that was a much easier transition. But it happened very organically. Pretty much through Summit. People would come to the events and be like, I want to build my brand like Summit. And I was like, well, I built the Summit brand. I'm happy to help you. And then that turned into, I was like, first I started helping friends, and I was like, wow, this is a real business. So I'm going to build an agency around it. And then I started working with larger companies, and I would step in as sort of the interim CMO or interim creative director. And like you said, it's like I'd step in with a scope of work and help them sort of execute on their strategies, from branding and marketing to web and their technology, and then I'd step out and just let it go. And in some ways it was I'm really grateful for that experience, because for several reasons. One, up until that point, the only business experience I had was Summit, and so like how we built our brand and how we built our company and how we structured the company. And this actually gave me an opportunity to step into other organizations, larger organizations, and be like, oh, this is how you, like, I just got so much, it was like I was getting paid to learn, basically. I was able to share my skill set, but also like, oh, this is how you run a large 300, 500 person company, how you structure it. And so it was kind of a crash course in that, at the same time providing value. But to your point, it just kind of hit this place where it was like, I'm not, I don't feel ownership and excitement around. I like the brands I'm working with and I'm helping. And what I was missing was, it's funny, it kind of goes back to when I felt in the music industry, was this kind of like a little bit of loneliness. Cause like I'm the sole owner of my agency. I would hire as independent contractors. I try to have no employees, I'd build the team based on the scope, and I delivered for whatever the client was. But it's me just sitting, at my house doing this and not collaborating with anyone, and not feeling a passion and ownership of something that I truly believe in to actually want to grow. And I mean, that really leads into when we started, talking about getting more involved in OGT, and it just really resonated with me, because it was like, oh, this is an opportunity to get back into a place where, like, I have collaborative, a partner I can trust and build ideas off of, and bounce ideas off and learn from, and at the same time something I'm actually a brand that actually has a deeper ethos that's more deeply connected to my core purpose and like in my belief system. And so that felt like a natural progression, to step back from the agency and start this journey.
I just want to say, man, it was so powerful that I was deeply touched by what you just shared with the Tony Hsieh, input that he gave you. Look, I mean, this is deeply raw as fuck, and really resonant for me, is that I've learned twice in my life the most important lesson you can learn in relationship. And certainly it's true in business, and you can market it to any kind of relationship. And it's before you become intoxicated by somebody's complementary skill sets, what they can do to second your own, first define and align around complementary life sets, values, right?
100%.
Because and ironically enough, it's a hell of a lot easier when you're in the trenches and you're working through. When things start going well, that's when actually ego can actually be a rat fuck thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say that we've been orbiting each other for 8 years, knowing each other from Summit, and always I was just like super intrigued by your presence, your humility, your creative vision, your openness and willingness, just as I witnessed you with others, and certainly the way we would always interact. Every interaction was consistent,
mm-hmm. and
it was consistent in terms of just like I just felt at home to be expressed, to be myself, and it was cool to see like everyone. It would be like we would just go on little riffs and kind of unpack a new concept or what have you.
Yeah.
It was always elevating to what was in my heart. So I would just want to say it's an honor to have you on this journey, and because there's nothing more important than being successful along the journey with those that you genuinely enjoy. And I've had the blessing from day one, for instance, of working with somebody who I genuinely enjoyed, and Josh Robertson,
mm-hmm.
Who was like the OOG for OGT, they're like building the Squarespace website, like making it operational, and then fast forward all the way down the line to everybody who's on the team, and it's a ohana, it
mm-hmm.
really is like this notion of family, because we spend time. And it's a beautiful reminder for all of us, like choose people that you actually enjoy, and choose people that actually, it doesn't matter how long of a day or how many twists and turns or when things go well or not, do you feel depleted or do you feel pleated?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if that's a word, pleated, but it makes sense to me. So it makes sense. I'm genuinely excited. Where do you see the future of OGT?
I mean, I just think there's so much opportunity. I think what you've created to this point is just, it's so impressive, from the quality and craft of the clothing, but even more not impressive but inspiring to me is the message that's behind it, and this message that you can actually create something that's not just sustainable and but actually regenerative and actually good for the planet, and actually healing the planet, at the same time helping people to express themselves fully, which is, it kind of goes back to like my core belief that it's the most important thing is for people to allow their full expression to come out in whatever form that is. And knowing that that's part of the OGT message is what excites me. And so where it's going, I mean, to me, it's amplifying that message as loud as possible across the world.
I love that, and inviting everybody in to see that they have a golden voice to share, and that's where we meet, and that's the
mm-hmm.
that's the most powerful thing, and that's actually, as a reminder, I mean, that's where this started, right?
Yeah, that's
where this started. This golden thread going around the world and reminding people that no, we all have a gift to share, and I love that notion that we can just be a reminder.
Yeah,
and it's a reminder by whether you're wearing a thread on your wrist, whether you're wearing the clothes themselves, or whether it's just the message itself. And that's why celebrating the musicality of life makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am grateful for you, and I think that we always end the Drops of Gold podcast with what is the sound of the golden mic drop? But instead of it being an auditory onomatopoeia, I think today we are going to go full circle, and the invitation is for you. to share. Just handed the kid a guitar.
Wow. Where to go from here?
We go everywhere from here.
Maybe I'll bring it back. We were talking about the whole history of my band. Maybe I can lay out the last song I ever wrote before I transitioned from the band and we started Summit.
This is it. What's the name?
It's called The Simple Act of Giving Up.
Boom. Full surrender.
See if I can remember how to play it, actually. This is going to be interesting.
The crows are excited to hear it.
You got to remember, I'm excited to play this because it's like in a lot of angst, in a lot of like some self-loathing at the time. And it was like what I grew out of into this person who, now of like having self-love. So you get to see where it was to where I am now. If I can remember how to play it. Let's try that again. We're going to have to cut that. Here I go again, put me on the first train heading eastbound. And if by June I'm still alive, I promise not to tell my dad the things I did, but thanks for all the sacrifice. I'm ashamed of the things that I did. I said whatever it took just to get her in bed. And it's kind of fun when you're only a kid, but you grow up to learn that the scars you cut are permanent. Having to think to only whole years, there's no need for thinking when you're not here. Do you find it amusing? I'm seeing clear in this haze of a full atmosphere. So come on, we're not fooling anybody tonight. We're the king and queen of social stupid side, and things are better now, knowing that we've never found anyone else to take me out. Cause I'm a mess when I'm alone, and anyone can help. I think I'm losing it. I grab and hold on tightly, but I start to slip. I got a problem with my self-control. I fall in love when I'm with any girl. They got it wrong, saying love is blind. It's fine, it's just disguised as sex tonight. It's too hard to deny. Let's play that first.
Damn, bringing it back.
Old school.
How'd that feel? When's the last time you sang that?
I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I don't know.
That was amazing.
Couldn't quite remember all the lyrics, but
I love that song. That is epic. That is
thanks.
epic, brother. Brother, Viking handshake. Bring it in with the other one. You are golden. I fucking love you, and I can't wait to see all the things that you're going to do in the world and your personally and what we're going to do together. And aho, and let's go.
Let's go. Love you, brother.
Drop of gold. Thank you for joining us on Drops of Gold. We trust you found listening as delightful as we found creating. Now let me tell you, it takes a village to nourish a dream. Big shout outs to One Golden Thread for powering the pod, to co-producers Mark Shapiro, Josh Robertson, and Victory for bringing it all to life, Kat Benzova for her stunning guest portraits, and special thanks to artist Taib for featuring his electrifying new track, Departures. And infinite love to you for your curiosity and commitment to living in your highest vibrational truth. Aho, here we grow. We are all designed to be reminded we are already golden inside. I'm Jeff Scult, wishing you a radically yes fuck yes day. Ashe.